What a real pleasure it is. And all of our NBA All-Star Week interviews are sponsored by the U.S. Air Force. Start your journey today. Visit airforce.com or call 1-800-423-USAF. What a pleasure to welcome to the UMA guest line the commissioner of the National Basketball Association. We are really excited to have you, Commissioner Silver, on the Murph and Markus show. We've been chopping it up here for many years in San Francisco. We've seen Steph Curry in a few parades, and now we're going to see the All-Star game and your league coming to our town. So I guess what I want to say, first of all, is good morning and welcome to the San Francisco Bay Area. Adam, how are you?
Hey, morning, Commish.
I'm great. Good morning to you guys. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a delight to have you, man. First and foremost, easy one, basketball in the Bay. What do you think of? I mean, we got We Believe. You got Rick Barry, the late, great Al Attles, Chris Mullin, Steph Curry. What do you think about when you think basketball in the Bay?
Most recently, I think championships. I mean, that, and I think about the Chase Center, and I think about everything that, you know, Joe Lacob and Peter Guber have done since taking over the organization. Of course, I'm always focused on Steph, who's a commissioner's dream. Just, you know, in addition to being an incredible player, just a pleasure to deal with and does amazing things in the community. So many positive stories have come out of your community over the last several years.
Yeah, and to your point, when we think about basketball in the Bay Area, we think about Steph Curry. But it feels like internationally, when people think about basketball now, they think about Steph Curry. So talk to us about what it's like having Steph Curry as a global ambassador for the game.
It makes my job easy, honestly. I mean, he travels in the off season. He goes everywhere. I mean, I think he plays most importantly with real joy. I mean, in addition to the success he's had, he's so relatable as a player. I think in part, not suggesting he's small, but, you know, he's not a giant like a lot of NBA players. So I think kids really relate to him. I actually think the growth we've seen in girls and women's basketball is directly connected to Steph too, because he plays below the rim. So he plays a very relatable style of basketball. And I think also there's a sense too from kids, because of his work ethic, that you can, by the harder you work, the better you're going to be, as opposed to things that that you can't control, like size. So I think Steph has been responsible for a surge in growth and participation. As you guys were saying, it's not just a Bay Area or even a U.S. Phenomenon. It's clearly global. And those images of him, you know, kids have smartphones all over the world now. So, you know, wherever you are, people, you know who he is. He's one of the most famous people on the planet at this point.
I think it's a great breakdown, particularly about the women. He's been a very ardent and outspoken supporter of women's basketball, too. And now we have the Valkyries here in the Bay Area. So good stuff. Adam Silver is the voice you hear, our NBA commissioner. Our party is here in the Bay Area this weekend. We've gone over, before you came on, all the good stuff that's going on with the Boys and Girls Clubs and HBCU Classics and refurbishing elementary schools and all the good stuff the NBA is doing. Back to Steph, though, just a basketball question, Commissioner Silver, and that is the three-point shot. We're at a point now it's being shot more than ever. Absolutely gigantic numbers of the three-point shot. I'm about your age. We remember the two-point. We remember George Gervin in the two-point shot. So are you a little worried about the outsized influence of the three-point shot?
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I begin by saying, I mean, look at the spectacular athleticism. You know, so if we're around the same age, I mean, there was a time when, you know, the concern was whether big men could make free throws, right? You know, they were much more one-dimensional as players. And the fact now, putting aside Steph for a second, you know, 7-footers in this league have to be able to make three-point shots to be successful, or at least have to be a genuine threat, because they, you know, part of defenses now requires players to be covered wherever they are. You know, it's whether or not there's too much three-point shooting. Clearly, when Steph shoots three-pointers, nobody thinks it's too much shooting. And I'll just use an example. Like, I was in Paris for the Olympics this past summer, and a lot of people came up to me and said, two of the greatest basketball games they ever saw, and these are like hardcore college and NBA fans, were the U.S. Serbia and USA France. You know, in those games, there were three-point shooting was at a higher rate. You know, they're 40-minute games as opposed to 48 minutes, but they were at a higher rate than you see in NBA games. And nobody came away from those games saying there was too much three-point shooting. So on one hand, I think it's an incredible shot. It allows teams often to come back where, you know, to close gaps and scores. The skill level is outstanding, as I said, to do it. I think the issue has less to do with a three-point shot versus, let's say, a two-point shot as it does with maybe there's too much of a homogeneous style of play in the league right now. And I think people, if you think about the brand, of the Pistons basketball at one point, those championship, Detroit teams, or those Bulls teams, or when the Trailblazers were doing so well, when the Knicks were doing so well, the Spurs, you think about that style. I think people want to see diversity in style around the league. And I think what we're seeing in basketball, not unlike other sports, is that analytics push teams to a certain similar style and play because some shots are more efficient than others. So, are there ways we can improve the game? I'm sure there are. It's something we're always looking at. We have a competition committee. Speaking of the Pistons, Joe Dumars runs basketball operations here. So it's something we spent a lot of time thinking about. Will there be tweaks? I think if there was an easy tweak, some people have suggested moving the three-point line back or cutting off the corner threes. I'm not sure that's the answer. It may go to allowing a little bit more physicality on defense, particularly for outside shooting. So we're looking at it, but I'm pretty happy with the state of the game right now.
It was Joe Lacob who gave us the famous quote that the Warriors were light years ahead of the rest of the NBA. Now, to your point, it feels like a lot of the NBA has caught up with the amount of three-pointers that they're taking, but also they're catching up to how the Warriors run their own brand of basketball. So talk to us about Joe Lacob taking over the franchise. They were, of course, out in Oakland. Now they're in San Francisco. Now they have 4 titles. And it feels like the Warriors have kind of influenced the changing of the game when it comes to the new CBA rules and the second tax apron. So just talk to us about the overall effect of Joe Lacob taking over this franchise.
I just begin by saying, Joe and his partner Peter Guber have done an outstanding job. And part of it is when he came in, bringing, Bob Myers in on the basketball side, Rick Welts. Just outstanding executives. And I think Joe would be the first to acknowledge, part of his job was to put together an outstanding team. And of course, then Steve Kerr at the time, when he hired him as a coach, it seems like he's been at this so long, forget that this was the first head coaching job he had in the league. And so, Joe is a great leader of people. And I also say among owners in the league, he's truly full-time. Like many of the people who oversee our teams or have ultimate control are also running businesses and they have full-time day jobs. I think, I know Joe does some other things, invests as well, but he's been all in on his basketball team as his family has. So enormous amount of credit should go to him. I think that, that quote that you referenced before, what I enjoyed about it was I think Joe understood that was going to become chalkboard material, for 29 other teams around the league by saying they were light years ahead. On the other hand, Joe didn't regret saying it. I think we are, and he had the record to back it up. So, and then when he said that was before my recollection, they built the Chase Center. And then I think what's amazing about what the Warriors has done, not just, of course, in adding the Valkyrie now, but he's built a world-class business operation. And what you're seeing now with the arena, the activities around it, the commercial activities, the sort of the real estate development, Stripe City, how cool that is, the brand new sports bar that just opened up. And now the All-Star is to me a culmination of all of that, because the All-Star takes many years to put together. And so this goes back several years of, when Rick Welts was still with the organization, and Joe and Peter and Rick and Bob Myers coming to the league office saying, now we want to host an All-Star, we're going to have our new building online. And so I'm coming to town tomorrow. I'm thrilled to be there. And the Bay Area has become an epicenter for basketball, as you guys said earlier, globally. And I love to hear that in addition to, great baseball teams, great football teams, you guys are also known for your basketball as well.
It's great to talk to Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, who will be here hosting a party with Steph Curry. By the way, good shout out for the new sports bar Splash. So Adam, that means you over there get a beer and go hit the golf simulator over there perhaps this weekend?
Maybe the beer, but I don't know about the golf simulator.
A couple more
Not
minutes.
much of a golfer.
A couple more minutes here with you. On the All-Star game, obviously you made the changes, the All-Star format, and it's like people are yelling and screaming. Even President Obama chastised Tyrese Halliburton. He said, come on, man, show some pride. He said, your forebears played harder. So you made the changes. Will there ever be a chance you go back to the traditional format? What's your attitude about the status of this game we're going to see this weekend?
So, just begin with the format we have now. I'm really looking forward to it. Part of it, I think, it's hard to turn the clock back. Other major league sports, the NFL, for example, moved to flag football for the Pro Bowl. I just think when I grew up, All-Star game was a rare opportunity to see many players who at best only came to your market once. I think now, because of digital media, streaming media, you can see, if you're a Warriors fan, regardless of where you are in the world, you can see every single game now on your phone. So I just think it's a different time. And I think part of it, while like nobody was proud of the All-Star presentation last year, I think the fans are looking for more than just a game. And I think by creating the new format we're using this year, having, multiple games to 40, shorter spurts of activity from the players, mixing up the teams a little bit, I actually think it's going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be something different. I guess things are also cyclical. So I think, now that we've moved to that format, it's not unimaginable to me in a few years, people will be longing for the traditional format, and even the players will be saying, let's go back to East versus West. And people have talked about, let's do sort of a Ryder Cup approach. Let's do U.S. against international players. That's something we've thought a lot about. I mean, part of the issue with doing that right now is we've had tremendous growth over the years in international players, roughly 30% of the league now. I think last time when we were in the Bay Area for the All-Star game 25 years ago, I mean, which, I was with the league at that time, so it doesn't seem like such a long time ago. 8% of the players were born outside the United States. Now it's 30%.
Ooh.
I think if you, to me, if you did U.S. versus the rest of the world, you'd still have a problem selecting the All-Stars because it would be a little unfair to the U.S. players because 30% of the players would be half the players. But maybe, 5-10 years from now, as it has to be, I think, just numerically, as so much basketball is being played globally, that there's going to be more international players. We may be at a point where it makes sense to do, something like U.S. international. So, I'm hopeful for this year. I think we're going to see a really exciting turnout. I know, I've talked directly to Steph about it, and many of the perennial All-Stars. I think none of them were proud of what you saw last year. I think they all recognize that, the fans want to be excited and entertained by the style of basketball they see on the floor. Again, I think it's not realistic to expect a playoff type style basketball, but I think at the same time we can get something that'd be really fun and exciting for fans to watch.
One last quick question before I let you go, Adam. Wanted to ask you about the ratings and viewership in the NBA, how confident you are in the league after moving on from faces of the franchise like a Steph Curry and LeBron James, and also kind of the ratings battle that you guys have engaged with the NFL with, whether it's a Christmas Day's game, we had LeBron and Steph Curry on that Saturday Christmas Day special, or even this past week when you look at the NBA trade talk and the buzz around the NBA during Super Bowl Radio Row.
We can't match the NFL's ratings, but we do pretty well on social media, that's for sure. So, I'll begin there. I would say in terms of ratings, our ratings are about even with last season, which was a 4-year high for the regular season. So it was true, the early reports in the season about ratings being down, that was correct. I think a lot of that had to do with going head-to-head with the, Yankees-Dodgers World Series early on. Obviously, a presidential election was commanding a lot of attention, but our ratings bounced back from Christmas on, as I said, roughly even at this point. I'm not concerned at all about it. I think it's next year we're moving to 3 new deals. One, our existing partner Disney, then moving to Comcast and Amazon. I think one of the benefits, I talk a lot about streaming and social media. Beginning next season, every single game will be available on a streaming service. And look, I'm sure it's the same for you guys. I know it's for me. A lot of the programming I watch these days are on my phone or my iPad. So I think making sure all the games are accessible, and that's as a global matter as well. The other thing, of course, ratings are a U.S. story. It's very important to us. But as we become more global, we're at the league offices not just focused on how many people are watching in the U.S., but how many people are watching globally. So I think it's a really solid story there. Other thing real quickly, what also excites me and my background at the NBA was I ran NBA Entertainment for many years. And I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of what you can do with streaming on games. I mean, we've seen some experimentation with Amazon Prime, certainly with Peacock, with ESPN. I mean, around the Olympics, Peacock was doing really fascinating things to make all the different Olympic events more accessible. I think what we're going to start seeing beginning next year is, a lot more personalization and customization with streaming. Like I said, if you're a Warriors fan anywhere in the world, the games will be very accessible to you. If you just want to watch Steph Curry, if you want to hear audio feeds from different people, not just your traditional play-by-play, and color commentary, you're going to be able to do that. More, different kinds of screens, the sort of gamification of sports, social media, merchandising. As I said, I think it's very early days in the next wave of sports production.
Really good. By the way, just can't thank you enough. As a commissioner of the NBA, great conversation, generous with your time. So hugely appreciated here on KNBR. But we have to ask the really hard-hitting question, how does a man your age stay so fit? What is the secret, Adam? The lean, mean Adam Silver, what's the deal?
You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Stress.
Well, it's
24 hours of it a day.
You haven't changed your pant size since your college years, I don't think, have you?
It's probably about the same.
You are blessed, my man. By the way, last thing, when you hang up with us, is your first call down to Dallas saying, guys, calm it down there, right?
You know, I'm glad we made it through this interview and looking forward to All-Star.
Good answer.
You are smooth, my man, and you're fit, too. So, anyway, we really appreciate it. And I'm sorry to say we're going to have a little rain when you get here, but hopefully it'll stop by the weekend. But just bring your galoshes for maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but that's part of the charm, I guess. And then, of course, Chase Center will be a glorious host. So, thank you, Adam Silver, for your time, and have a wonderful trip out west, okay?
Yeah, thanks for the packing tip, and I hope I see you around town the next few days.
He's a good man. Adam Silver on KMBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.